The sky over New York had been clear just hours before the invasion began. Captain Ryan Thomas, pacing in the command center beneath the city, knew that the calm before the storm was nothing but a cruel trick. The alien ships had descended in a silent, blinding flash, and the world had been changed in a heartbeat. He gripped the edge of the map, fingers digging into the holographic surface, his mind already calculating their next move. The Krakrans were relentless, inhuman in both their precision and cruelty. Thomas had seen the first wave break through Earth's defenses. Satellite communications were gone, global networks shattered. Their ships, massive and angular, glistening like the scales of some otherworldly beast, had opened fire with technology that outclassed humanity's by centuries. The Krakrans didn't negotiate. They exterminated. And they made it look easy. "Captain, you need to see this," came the voice of Lieutenant Jim Franklin, the team's tech specialist, pulling Thomas out of his thoughts. Jim had always been quick with a solution, but even he looked rattled now, his dark eyes wide with the weight of what was happening. "What's going on, Jim?" Jim's fingers flew across his console, the soft click of keys filling the tense silence. "They're using some kind of electromagnetic pulse to disrupt our systems. Everything's down, no comms, no air support." He paused. "We're on our own." Ryan took a deep breath. The men under his command had trained for this moment, but no one had expected an enemy like the Krakrans. "What's the status of the ground forces?" "Chaos," came the gruff reply from Sergeant John Jack Carter, the unit's heavy weapons expert. Jack was a man of few words, but when he spoke, his voice was always blunt and direct. He had been in firefights from the mountains of Afghanistan to the streets of Detroit, but nothing had prepared him for this. "The enemy's got infantry, bipedal, fast, and aggressive. They're tearing through our lines. It's like fighting a swarm of ants. Only these ants are armed with plasma rifles and skin tougher than steel." "Any weaknesses?" Thomas asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "Not that I can tell," Jack muttered, running a hand over his stubble. "We're outgunned, outmanned, and they don't seem to tire." "Great," Franklin said dryly. "So the whole world is about to be turned into alien target practice." "Awesome." He turned back to his console, fingers dancing across the keys. "Maybe not, though. I've been thinking." "We don't have time for thinking, Jim," Thomas interrupted. "We need action. Now." The captain's voice was calm, but the urgency was clear. I know. Jim's expression was one of frustration, but then a spark of realization lit his face. "Wait, they're tech-dependent, right? If we can get close enough, we might be able to disrupt their systems with an EMP. Not permanent, but it could give us a window to strike." Thomas considered the suggestion for a moment. "And you can build this thing on the fly?" Jim grinned, the confidence returning to his features. "You bet. I just need a little time and a lot of duct tape." The plan was put into motion. The team, working together like a well-oiled machine despite the pressure, gathered what they could from the wreckage of the city. Eli Torres, the youngest member of the group, had a natural gift for invention, and though he was still green compared to the seasoned veterans around him, his enthusiasm was contagious. He had already begun scavenging for materials. With Jim's technical expertise and Eli's improvisational skills, the makeshift EMP weapon started to take shape. But it wasn't just the weapon they needed. They needed a way to get close to the Krakrans without being shredded by their advanced weaponry. And that was where Marcus Mark Williams came in. Mark, a biologist and survival expert, had spent his life studying the natural world. And now, more than ever, his knowledge of ecosystems was proving invaluable. He suggested using the city's sewers, an underground network of forgotten tunnels and passageways that could shield them from the aliens' advanced sensors. "We'll need to move quickly," Mark warned as he led the team through the damp, oppressive darkness of the tunnels. "The Krakrans will adapt. They won't stay clueless forever." "Then we move faster," Ryan said, glancing over his shoulder at his team. "Jim, Eli, get that EMP ready. Jack, you're on point. We go in quiet. take out their outer defenses, and set up the trap. The trek through the tunnels was grueling. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, their muscles aching from the strain. Despite the chaos above, the sewers were eerily silent, as if they too were holding their breath. Ryan didn't like it. The stillness unnerved him, but he forced himself to focus. His men were depending on him. They emerged near the Kraken's forward base, a sprawling complex guarded by sleek, armored sentinels. From their position, they could see the alien soldiers moving with military precision, their eyes glowing with a cold, emotionless light. The EMP was ready. "I'll make the first move," Jack whispered, his voice low and steady. He was already checking his weapon, a modified version of an alien pulse rifle that Eli had re-engineered for human hands. "Cover me." As Jack moved forward, Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. The world felt like it was closing in on him. Every decision, every moment of hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. Yet, even in the chaos, he trusted his team. They'd fought together before, and they'd fight again. The EMP activated with a soft, almost inaudible hum, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed like the universe held its breath. The Kraken's energy shields flickered, then went dark. The soldiers froze, their technology glitching. It was enough. Jack opened fire. The battle that followed was brutal, but the humans fought with the kind of desperation only those who had everything to lose could muster. And as the last of the Krakens fell, Ryan allowed himself a moment to breathe. They had won, for now. But the war was far from over. The underground base buzzed with activity as the team regrouped after their first major victory. Captain Ryan Thomas stood at the center of the room, surrounded by flickering monitors and a handful of weary survivors. Though the Krakens had suffered a blow, Ryan knew it was temporary. Their enemy would adapt, just as they had always done, and the next attack would be even deadlier. "We bought ourselves time," Ryan said, his voice firm but measured. "Let's not waste it." Lieutenant Jim Franklin leaned against a console, his fingers absent-mindedly spinning a screwdriver. "That EMP was a Band-Aid. A good one, sure, but we need something bigger. Smarter. These aliens learn fast." "Then we learn faster," Ryan replied. "You've got ideas. Let's hear them." Jim straightened, setting the tool down with a clatter. "Their tech isn't invincible. It's all interconnected, like a neural network. If we can disrupt the flow of data in their systems, we could cripple them. Not just their weapons, but their command structure, too. Problem is, I'd need to get my hands on more of their tech to figure out the specifics." "Tech we don't have," Mark Williams added, stepping forward. The biologist had been poring over samples of alien tissue collected during the skirmish. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were smeared with something that looked suspiciously like alien blood. "But I've got something. These Krakens are biological machines. Their organs aren't just organic, they're integrated with their tech. If we can exploit that connection, we might have a way in." Eli Torres, sitting cross-legged on the floor, glanced up from the mess of parts scattered before him. "You're talking about building a weapon that's part biological, part technological?" He smirked, his youthful energy undimmed despite the dire situation. "You're speaking my language, document. Call it whatever you want," Mark said, folding his arms. "But if we don't push boundaries, we're done." Ryan nodded. "Jim, Mark, Eli, you're on it. Jack, you and I are going scavenging. We'll find the tech you need." The plan took shape quickly, the urgency of their predicament driving them forward. Jack Carter led the charge into what had once been a bustling urban center, now reduced to rubble. The streets were littered with the remains of Kraken's first assault. Burnt-out vehicles, collapsed buildings, and the eerie hum of alien patrols overhead. Jack's sharp eyes scanned the area as he gripped his modified pulse rifle. "Feels like walking into a trap." "Probably is," Ryan said evenly, his own weapon at the ready. "But we don't have a choice." They moved with practiced precision, slipping through the wreckage and avoiding alien patrols. Ryan's focus never wavered. even when the sound of distant plasma fire sent a shiver down his spine. They reached their target, a downed Kraken scout ship, its hull still smoking from the battle. "Jack, cover me," Ryan said, kneeling beside the wreckage. He pried open a damaged panel, revealing the intricate alien machinery within. His fingers worked quickly, pulling out components he didn't fully understand but trusted Jim and Eli would. A sharp click echoed behind them. Jack spun, raising his weapon just as a Kraken emerged from the shadows. The alien moved with lethal grace, its glowing eyes fixed on them. Without hesitation, Jack fired, the pulse round striking true. The Kraken crumpled, but not before a low, mechanical wail escaped it, an alert signal. "Time to go," Jack growled, yanking Ryan to his feet. They sprinted back to the base, the sound of pursuing drones growing louder. When they finally slid through the reinforced doors, Ryan handed the salvage tech to Jim. "Make it count." The team worked tirelessly, the air thick with tension and the scent of sweat and ozone. Jim and Eli pored over the alien components, their hands moving in synchrony as they pieced together a prototype. Mark, meanwhile, focused on the biological samples, isolating a compound he believed could disrupt the Kraken's neural link. Their combined efforts birthed something new, a weapon that pulsed faintly with a life of its own. "It's not pretty," Eli admitted, holding up the crude device. "But it'll work." Ryan examined the weapon, its strange, alien glow casting flickering shadows on the walls. "What exactly does it do?" Jim grinned, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Think of it as a virus. It hijacks their tech, causes a cascade failure in their systems. It's got a short range, but if we deploy it near one of their command nodes, it'll be chaos," Mark finished. "Their whole network could collapse, even if only for a few minutes." "Enough time for us to hit them hard," Jack said, cracking his knuckles. The team didn't waste time. Armed with the new weapon, they launched a coordinated strike on a Kraken forward operating base. The mission was daring, borderline suicidal, but it was their best shot at leveling the playing field. Eli carried the weapon, his hands steady despite the danger. The team moved like shadows, slipping past sentries and automated defenses until they reached the heart of the base. A massive spire loomed above them, its surface shimmering with energy. "That's the node," Jim whispered. "Eli, you're up." Eli nodded, stepping forward to place the device. Just as he activated it, the ground trembled and an alarm blared. The Krakens had detected them. "Incoming," Jack shouted, opening fire as waves of Kraken soldiers poured into the room. The team fought with everything they had, their movements precise and coordinated. Ryan barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. The device pulsed, sending out a ripple of energy. The Krakens froze, their movements jerky and unnatural. One by one, their weapons failed, their glowing eyes dimming. "Now!" Ryan roared, and the team unleashed their full arsenal, tearing through the enemy ranks. When the dust settled, the base was in ruins, and the team stood victorious. The weapon had worked. For the first time, the Krakens had been dealt a significant blow. As they retreated, Ryan looked at his men, their faces grim but resolute. They had proven that humanity could adapt, could fight back. But he knew this was only the beginning. The Krakens would return, angrier and more dangerous than ever. "We've shown them what we can do," Ryan said, his voice steady. "Now we show them what we're capable of." The Kraken flagship loomed above the ruined Earth, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons and pulsating with an ominous, alien energy. It was a city unto itself, the seat of their command and the heart of their invasion. Captain Ryan Thomas stared up at it from their hiding spot in the shadow of a blasted skyscraper, his jaw set in grim determination. The fight had led them here, to the precipice of victory or annihilation. "Think they'll roll out the welcome mat," Jack Carter muttered, checking the charge on his pulse rifle. His voice carried the faintest edge of humor, a habit he clung to in the face of danger. Ryan smirked but didn't reply. His mind was on the plan, a desperate gamble cobbled together from weeks of blood and ingenuity. The device they'd crafted, Mark's biosynthetic compound married to Jim's hack Kraken tech, was their best shot at crippling the flagship systems. If they could plant it in the ship's core, it might overload their neural network and leave the enemy blind. Lieutenant Jim Franklin crouched beside Eli Torres, both men finalizing the modifications on the device. Eli worked with a calm efficiency that belied his youth, his hands moving deftly over the glowing mechanisms. "This thing's going to make fireworks look boring," he said, passing a component to Jim. "Let's hope it doesn't blow us up in the process," Jim replied dryly, though there was a trace of pride in his voice. Mark Williams finished adjusting the straps on his pack, which contained the weapon. "I've calibrated the compound for maximum spread. Once it's deployed, we'll have minutes to get out before the whole thing goes up." "Minutes we might not have," Ryan said, his tone heavy. He scanned the team, each of them battered and worn but unyielding. "We're going in blind, surrounded by an enemy that doesn't know how to quit. But if we don't take this chance, it's over. For all of us." Jack's grin was wolfish. "That's all I needed to hear." The team moved under the cover of darkness, navigating the wreckage of the city as they approached the flagship's landing struts. The ship loomed like a living mountain, its surface shifting subtly as though it breathed. Strange drones patrolled its perimeter, their movements eerily silent. Ryan led the way, signaling for the others to hold as a pair of drones passed overhead. Eli tapped Jim on the shoulder. "I thought you disabled their sensors." "Disabled doesn't mean non-existent," Jim hissed back, his eyes scanning the glowing patterns along the ship's hull. "We're still invisible to most of their systems, but we can't get sloppy." Reaching the base of the struts, Ryan gestured toward an access hatch, its alien design shimmering faintly in the dark. "Eli, can you get us in?" The young inventor nodded, pulling out a Kraken tool he'd modified. "Give me 30 seconds. Time stretched as Eli worked, the hum of the flagship above them a constant reminder of the stakes. Finally, with a soft hiss, the hatch slid open. Ryan motioned the team forward, and they entered the alien ship. The interior was a labyrinth of organic and mechanical structures fused together. Walls pulsed with dim, bioluminescent light, and the air was thick with an unfamiliar metallic tang. The ship felt alive, its corridors twisting in ways that defied logic. Mark adjusted his pack, his expression unreadable. "If this place doesn't give you nightmares, nothing will." Ryan led them deeper, his every sense on high alert. The silence inside was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. They encountered no resistance, but the tension was suffocating. "Something's off," Jack muttered, his grip on his rifle tightening. "They should have spotted us by now." "They're overconfident," Jim suggested, though even he sounded uncertain. "They don't think we can get this far." Their progress was steady until they reached a large chamber near the ship's core. A massive conduit stretched from floor to ceiling, glowing with alien energy. It pulsed rhythmically, as though pumping lifeblood through the ship. "That's it," Mark said, pointing to the conduit. "The core?" Ryan nodded. "Eli, set the device. Everyone else, stay sharp." As Eli approached the conduit, the hum of the ship grew louder, almost as if it sensed the intrusion. Jack shifted uneasily, his weapon trained on the nearest doorway. Suddenly, the chamber shook, and the walls seemed to come alive. Kraken soldiers poured in, their glowing eyes locked on the intruders. The air filled with the crackling sound of plasma weapons charging. "Ambush!" Jack shouted, opening fire. The battle was chaotic, the confined space amplifying every sound and flash of light. Ryan moved with practiced precision, taking down one alien after another, his voice cutting through the noise as he issued commands. "Eli, focus on the device. Jim, cover him." Eli worked frantically, his hands trembling as he connected the final components. Almost there, Mark used a makeshift Kraken blade to fend off a soldier that had closed the distance, his movements fueled by desperation. Jim ducked behind a console, returning fire with calculated bursts. Jack, in the center of the fray, fought like a man possessed, his rifle spitting rounds as he shouted curses at the advancing aliens. The device emitted a sharp, rising whine as Eli activated it. "It's live. We've got 2 minutes." Ryan's heart pounded as he barked the order. "Fall back. Now." The team fought their way out, every step a struggle against the relentless Kraken forces. The corridors seemed to twist and shift, as though the ship itself was trying to trap them. Ryan's legs burned, his breath ragged, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. As they neared the exit, the ship shuddered violently. The device had begun its work, disrupting the Kraken systems. Lights flickered, and the alien soldiers stumbled, their movements disjointed. "We're almost there," Ryan shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The team burst through the hatch just as the flagship began to collapse in on itself, its massive form writhing as the device unleashed its full power. They sprinted away, the ground trembling beneath them. Behind them, the Kraken vessel erupted in a blinding explosion, the shockwave knocking them to the ground. When the dust settled, Ryan pushed himself up, his body aching. The flagship was gone, reduced to a smoldering crater. Around him, his team slowly rose, battered but alive. Jim let out a shaky laugh, his face streaked with grime. "Did we just do that?" Jack grinned, though his voice was hoarse. "Hell yeah, we did." Ryan surveyed the wreckage, his expression hard but triumphant. "This isn't over. They'll send more, but they'll know what we're capable of now." Mark placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "And next time, we'll be ready." In the distance, the first rays of dawn broke through the smoke-filled sky. Humanity had struck a blow against an impossible foe, proving that even in the darkest moments, their resilience and ingenuity could shine.